Sure. So for me, if I look at kind of how I got started in SEO, it was really kind of luck. I think if I mentioned the few of the jobs I've worked in, all of those jobs like have gotten through kind of networks and networking. And what I've learned about that is most of the time when it's through your networks, it's not necessarily the people who are closest to you. It generally tends to be kind of your wider network. So it's often people who you meet once or twice at an event or a friend of a friend. These are generally the people who kind of opened doors for me when it's come for opportunities. Malcolm Gladwell talks about this where he mentions weaker ties. It's in his book. I think it's Tipping Point. He kind of speaks at length about that. And I've certainly seen that concept play out in my own career.
At the Inbound Podcast, today we have Richard Fenning, Director SEO at Sherlock Communications, former SEO team leader at MercadoLibre, SEO manager at Lojas, Americanas, and more. We'll talk about enterprise SEO, actionable ideas on how to communicate internally to stakeholders, team management, and actionable tips to help you in your career path. Hey Richard, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hi, Jose. I'm great. Thanks. How are you doing?
Doing great, man. Doing great. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to have you here. Richard, to give you a little context in general, we first met back in, 2018, 2019, back in MercadoLibre's offices here in Buenos Aires. But yeah, I want to start with a simple question, which is, what do you think is the number or the metric that can help anyone size how big MercadoLibre is? It can be SEO related, performance, business, or whatever. Just pick the one you like.
I find MercadoLibre is just a beast. Like, it's the real Latin American success story. And I think the one thing that I look at is the one, if you like, metric of excellence is that it's in the NASDAQ top 100. So it's been viewed as one of the most important tech companies in the world. It's obviously on the New York Stock Exchange, where we saw it moving a number of years ago. Its stock price has maybe fallen a little bit. But for me personally, if I was to look at how I would value MercadoLibre, it's purely based on market cap. I think more anecdotally, as you said, we met at MercadoLibre offices in 2018. Yeah. The amount of my friends now that work in MercadoLibre is huge. MercadoLibre is really kind of just growing so much as a company that a lot of people in digital work there. It's huge. If I look back in terms of SEO stuff, the two things that really impressed me in terms of SEO is the amount of pages that they have indexed. I think it's something like, it's 100 million pages indexed just in Brazil, and hundreds and hundreds of millions of visitors across the Latin American, the 19 markets that MercadoLibre operates in. So yeah, if that's the answer to your question, I'd probably see it in terms of market cap, because it's been a huge success story. I think the company started in 1999, and until today, it's just been growing. And complete transparency, I own some shares in MercadoLibre, and I've got a very positive outlook for the future of that company. I think we all do. But it's a beast. It's really well run as well. From working inside it, you get an insight of what the people, the professionals there, and they're almost fantastic, very dedicated people.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a beast. It's crazy their size and how fast they grow. So I totally agree with you. And it's funny because different people over the company, perhaps they said, I don't know, they sell a few hundred products a second or whatever. So you went full on market cap. So I like that. It's good to know. Well, Richard, I have lots of things to talk with you, but I think I had to just pick some of them. So the main idea today is to talk about enterprise SEO, perhaps not that on the technical part, but on the business by itself. Then things related to team management, because I know you're a seasoned professional. You've managed different teams over different companies and different countries also, and career path and many other things. But before that, do you want to make an intro on your side, and perhaps to tell us a little more on how did you get there?
Sure. So, obviously Richard, I'm from Ireland, and in about 2012, I took the step to move to Latin America, but it wasn't really a decision. It was just something that happened. I was traveling, kind of backpacking around Latin America, and I ended up in Buenos Aires. I really liked the city, and then the challenge for me was, how can I stay in Buenos Aires? How can I make this work? So I went and started working in various different companies, but always related in the area of digital. I worked first in an agency, which was a digital marketing agency. I went and I worked in an app, which was in kind of mobile growth, which was called Recarga Pay, where we had to basically get new users for the app. It was growth marketing before growth marketing really was a thing. And then then I kind of did a startup, and then I ended up inside MercadoLibre working in SEO. So in total, I spent about 10 years in Buenos Aires. And then a number of years ago, about 3 or 4 years, I took the move from Buenos Aires to Rio de Janeiro. So to go obviously from Spanish-speaking America to Portuguese-speaking America. And I continued working in Brazil. And now recently, the last year, I worked previously in Lojas Americanas, and then a year ago, I started working in an agency where we got a little branch of the agency, which is called Sherlock Communications, where we work also doing SEO for clients. So it's really been kind of, fallen in love with Latin America. It's kind of a continent where I feel very much at home. And I've been lucky enough to adventures and found jobs and challenges that have kept me busy professionally.
Awesome. So you are more than welcome to come back here to the city you want here in Latin America. Awesome. And more going into more the professional part, do you want to tell me more about I don't know, the teams you've managed, or perhaps what you are doing right now in Sherlock?
Sure. So for me, if I look at kind of how I got started in SEO, it was really kind of luck. I think if I mentioned the few of the jobs I've worked in, all of those jobs I have gotten through kind of networks and networking. And what I've learned about that is, most of the time when it's through your networks, it's not necessarily the people who are closest to you. It generally tends to be kind of your wider network. So it's often people who you meet once or twice at an event, or a friend of a friend. These are generally the people who kind of opened doors for me when it's come for opportunities. Malcolm Gladwell talks about this, where he mentions weaker ties in his book. I think it's Tipping Point. He kind of speaks at length about that, and I've certainly seen that concept play out in my own career. Then when it comes to SEO, I think SEO is something which is absolutely fascinating. SEO is obviously search engine optimization, for people who don't know about it. SEO is basically, how do we present our web pages or our products in the best possible way for Google to be able to read and index and position these for users to get the best positions inside Google search engine. And I basically fell into SEO. The people have all sorts of different profiles for SEO. My profile is a little bit different. I did a master's in the science of marketing in Ireland. Then I ended up working in digital. So it wouldn't be exactly a typical background for somebody with a technical background. But I started working in SEO, and I absolutely love it. It's absolutely fascinating. So I think that my background is probably a little more on the communication side. But I got working in SEO, and I think it's been fantastic for me. I'd recommend it to anyone.
Awesome. And it's very curious what you mentioned, because someone could say, okay, in order to manage a whole SEO team in companies that have, I don't know, 100 million pages, as you said before, you have to be technical. Yeah, you have to be it. It's like the common idea on that. But I like your approach on being perhaps I don't know, more interested in the communication part, which can help, I don't know, understand users' needs, intents, and not that in the, I don't know, crawl budget optimization or analysis or different things. So following that, which are for you the main challenges, okay, in, for example, moving from agency SEO to, I don't know, in-house SEO in big companies, and I know you mentioned you started in agency, then in-house, and now you're back in agency, right?
Sure. Yeah, it's a really interesting point, and it's something that I think about a lot. Broadly speaking, I would describe
Mm-hmm.
it in the following way. I think
Mm-hmm.
agency is very, very good for people, specifically when they're starting a career. Because agency, it gives you an awful lot of time to deal with different clients, different projects, and different problems. So in maybe 1 or 2 or 3 years in an agency, you will encounter a huge amount of variety of work. Now, this is in SEO, or it could be in any other area of digital marketing, or even
Mm-hmm.
marketing in general. It just gives you this huge kind of breadth of experience. For, in the morning, you can be dealing with one client, which can generally, when you're dealing with agencies, is dealing with problems or opportunities. You're dealing with one opportunity, one client in the morning, you're dealing with something completely different in the middle of the day, and then in the evening, you've got something else. So it's a huge variety of work, which is absolutely fantastic. I think one of
Mm-hmm.
the challenges, one of the difficulties with working in an agency is it can lead to kind of burnout. Sometimes people are dealing with an awful lot of stuff. The demand of work can be quite high. And a lot of times, maybe you don't have the time you need to be able to go in and deal with a client in depth. You've got a certain amount of hours, or you've got other clients. I think that's one of the challenges. I think in an agency, it gives people a huge opportunity to learn a lot, and also I think to really stay at the cutting edge, because clients are always looking for, hey, what's the newest thing, or what's coming out, what are the trends, what's new in our industry. In
Mm-hmm.
parallel, or in, if you like, I think working in-house, what I found about working in-house was it was much more about dealing with communication inside the company, dealing with different teams. And you also needed to go much deeper. You might have had
Mm-hmm.
done much less projects. You might deal with 3-4 projects in a semester. And you need to go very, very deep, and need to have much more kind of rounded solutions. So for me, it's kind of worked like that. So working in an agency was where I went to learn at the very start of my career. I was lucky that I was able to learn an awful lot. Then I went in-house, if you like, where I was able to manage teams and much more work on communication skills. And now I've gone back to work in an agency, which has given me kind of now being able to go in and kind of bring my skills up to date. And I also deal with another area of an agency, which is going out and then looking for clients as well.
Oh, awesome, awesome. So you gave a second chance to the agency, but with a different approach, different experience, right?
Yeah, exactly. For me, it's been really cool. I think both of them kind of work very, very well. And I think it depends what are your objectives and also where you are. But if you're looking to learn, for me, the best way to learn, the best kind of university is in an agency. It's kind of practical experience, and that's where you'll get it.
I found really interesting what you mentioned about working in-house. You have to communicate a lot. You have to deal with different, I don't know, team leaders. You have to collaborate between different parts of the industry, of the company. So I don't know if you want to specify, or perhaps be in general, different examples or scenarios in Meli, in Americanas, about how you dealt with, for example, not having what you needed. For example, you wanted to implement something or change something or bring a new project. Okay, how do you create all that flow in order for things to get done?
Sure. So every company is very, very different. So if I talk about my experience, which is in MercadoLibre and in Lojas Americanas. So MercadoLibre, we all know, is the e-commerce company, which is absolutely huge in all of Latin America. Lojas Americanas is basically one of the competitors of MercadoLibre, but just in Brazil. So it's a massive
Mm-hmm.
horizontal e-commerce company just based in Brazil, and it's one of the largest in Brazil. So Brazil is a little bit unique in terms of its e-commerce environment, where there's 5 big players in Brazil. Be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years. We expect that the market will consolidate, but at the moment there's 5 big players, and Lojas Americanas is one of those 5 big players. So they're quite kind of similar
Okay.
companies. But I
Okay.
found the culture incredibly
Mm-hmm.
different in both companies, and the SEO culture was also very, very different. So let's talk a little bit
Okay.
about MercadoLibre at the start. So the team we had in MercadoLibre was 4 highly kind of experienced SEO professionals. So we got 4
Mm-hmm.
people who were dealing with 19 markets, and I was leading that team. So as you can tell, there's a small amount of people and a huge amount of work to do. So what we basically did in MercadoLibre was the following: we prioritized our main markets. So our main markets were Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina, and a little bit Colombia. So we've got kind of 4 markets. and then
Okay.
everything else is put on a secondary plane. However, one of the beauties of that system with MercadoLibre is one of the challenges with SEO. In my opinion, there's a lot of challenges in SEO, but one of the large challenges in SEO is the time that everything takes. Things take a long time. It's just the nature of SEO. We need a long time to get the results. One of the other challenges with SEO is that it's difficult to be able to understand the potential risks and potential challenges that you can have when you make a change. So something very, very basic. Let's say that we have an e-commerce product page. We want to make a change on the H1 or H2 tags. If we're in MercadoLibre, we can take a secondary market, let's say, for example, Chile, and we can then implement this change in Chile, in the Chilean market. We can see what happens. Is this, is it a neutral result? Is it a positive result, or is it a negative result? And then if this results in the experiment, let's say, for example, Chile was successful, so we'll roll it out in Colombia, then Argentina, then Mexico, and finally Brazil. So we had kind of a system where we were able to do experiments based on whole markets, which actually worked very, very well. What I found in MercadoLibre, as I said, we had people who were kind of, they'd worked in SEO for a long time. We were also quite lucky. Whereas in MercadoLibre, the SEO team was placed inside the marketing division. We actually sat beside all the technical guys. So this was in the time before COVID, and we were actually sitting beside the catalog team. We were sitting beside the search team. We were sitting beside different technical teams who obviously over time you get to know these people, and then you basically just do a lot of projects together. So in MercadoLibre, we had very good working relationships with these different technical teams. And this basically helped us implement everything. When it came to, so that's MercadoLibre.
Mm-hmm.
When it came to Lojas Americanas, it was just a different setup. In Lojas Americanas, we had a team of 10 people. So we'd, a lot more kind of people. So we could do a lot more stuff. We'd also had very experienced professionals, people as well had a lot of experience. One of the challenges we had in Lojas Americanas was that the team in Lojas Americanas was dispersed. We had some people who worked, our office was based in Rio de Janeiro. We had some people who worked in the city of Sao Paulo. We had some people who worked in the countryside of Sao Paulo. These were big offices. And there wasn't really a culture of SEO in Lojas Americanas. One of the first things that we did in Lojas Americanas was to go out and to educate people on SEO. And that literally meant that on Thursdays, it was Thursday at 5:00, we would sit down in an auditorium and we would present a presentation on SEO every single Thursday. And different teams would come along.
Oh.
What we were trying to do is we were trying to build a culture that when people were launching a new project, that they would contact us first. So we could help them with the SEO from the beginning, as opposed to sadly what happens in companies is a lot of times they launch a project and then they say at the end, hey, how can we improve the SEO? So to build up that culture, that's what we did. We started literally going out and making presentations. I also went to Sao Paulo, to our office in Sao Paulo, where we did an awful lot of events. We went to our catalog team, which was based in a large distribution center in the countryside of Sao Paulo. We gave them different kind of workshops on SEO, explained to them about different concepts of SEO, so they would have SEO on the top of their mind when they were creating web pages or when they were launching projects. We also got very much involved. One of the challenges that I had, I'm sure it's a challenge for other people who work in this, is hiring the right people in SEO. So maybe some of your viewers today, they either want to work in SEO or they're managers who want to hire people in SEO. And it's a challenge for us to try and create that match between the right candidates and the right jobs. So one of the things that we did in Lojas Americanas when we were there is we set up SEO meetups. So we did about 3 or 4 of these meetups. We did them in our office in the evenings. We would bring in a few Coca-Cola, a bit of food, a few beers, and we would get in some very high, well-known speakers who would speak, and we would invite people from the community into our office. Now, I did this for 2 reasons. Number one was obviously to, help the community. And one thing that SEO is very good at is the community, but I also did it as a way to hire people. Because we would get everybody in, they would see our office, we'd be able to talk to them. And then when I was looking to hire people, I would immediately have a group of people who I could contact and I could hire. So we had a plan inside the company of going around and talking to people, and then outside the company of doing meetups. We also set up WhatsApp groups, LinkedIn groups, just to kind of create this community, which then helps me if I needed to hire people or if I needed some help with the community down the line. Which personally, from my side, that's probably my favorite aspect of SEO. Is in SEO, one of the challenges is that we are not told by Google what is correct. Google will never say this is correct, this isn't correct, which is different in AdWords. If you work in Google Ads, you can go into the offices in Google, they will bring you for lunch, they'll tell you everything. In SEO, if you work in SEO, Google never want to tell you anything, they never want to bring you for lunch, they never want to meet you, which is totally understandable. But in response to that, we've got a really good community. People really help each other.
This is really interesting to me. You mentioned lots of great things, but the one that most resonated to me is you mentioned that you ended up working in MercadoLibre and perhaps then in Lojas Americanas, out of luck, out of working with the broader network you created, and then when you were in those companies, you did the same in order to create SEO meetups, in order perhaps for others to have the same that you had. So it's awesome. And I also like your approach on getting to know people, because I don't know, SEO meetups, they occur, I don't know, once a year or perhaps a few times a year, but then there are different meetups, and I don't know, in a year perhaps you get to know and you get to speak and to see how they think about specific things, and perhaps, I don't know, 10 times with a candidate that is not a candidate now, but perhaps next year you end up working together. So it's awesome. Really interesting. Yeah.
I completely agree. One of the things I most look for in the people who I work with, my team, is passion. So if someone is willing to give up their Thursday night and come to an event, to a meetup, it shows me that they have passion for SEO. And I think that if someone has passion, they're willing to work at a problem a little bit longer. They're willing to look for more creative solutions, or they're willing to, just have passion in the office. Just be kind of a passionate, happy person. So if I'm looking to hire someone, I would often look much more than their technical skills or their knowledge. What is their personality like? What are their values? And I think one of the things is passion. And if someone can demonstrate that by, being happy to come to meetups and stuff like that. So yeah, I personally, I've got a lot of passion for SEO. I love it. And I was lucky that when I worked in Americanas, that they shared that and they were willing to put, budget aside, and they're willing to invite people into the office and do something that works very, very well.
Yeah, but very clear, especially things that are not directly impacting their performance, their SEO, but will, in a way, in some time, will do it. So it's very good. And also I found interesting the specific differences you made or you highlighted from, I don't know, MercadoLibre's team and the one of Lojas Americanas, different headcount, the problems or the easy steps perhaps being all together, and the differences. So these are all really interesting approaches, and perhaps a little related to this and to the idea of, okay, how did you make to I don't know, Lojas Americanas to put aside a budget in order to do what you wanted. So my question here is, how do you manage, and perhaps you already gave me a few ideas, but how do you manage to evangelize SEO within a company? You mentioned SEO meetups, perhaps from people outside the company. Then presentations, you said every Thursday, but directly, if you have to present, I don't know, to directors, let's say more like the cold numbers, what's your approach on that, to either directors, C-levels, or different people?
Sure. So at my level, which was basically my title was the manager of SEO in Lojas Americanas, that was the biggest challenge we had, was, if you like, upward communication for SEO in terms of what we're trying to do and why we are doing it. Because normally when you're speaking to a director, what you're doing is you're asking them for the budget. And obviously if someone's in a director role, what they're really focused on is results. Now, the challenge that we had in SEO was two things. One of them was, I mentioned earlier on, the time that is needed in SEO to show the results. And then the second kind of challenge is it's often very difficult in SEO to create a direct line between the inputs and the outputs. So between the work that you do and the results that you get. Why is that? That's because nobody understands Google's algorithm.
What's in the middle?
Exactly. Yeah. We call it the black box. Now, at the same time, I'm not saying that SEO is black magic, because it's not. There's obviously, it's
Mm-hmm.
quite scientific, but
Mm-hmm.
Google has, as we know, maybe 400 ranking factors. Now, we have some idea of what these are, but we don't 100% know. So when I'm speaking to a director, one of the things that they always want is they want to know, what's the cost, what are the results, and how long will it take? So if you like, I can tell them what how much it's going to cost. I can give my idea on the results, and it's going to take a long time. So one of the things that I would do is, first of all, is to try and get buy-in from people. So to explain to them what we are doing and why we are doing it, to explain my logic. I feel with understanding things are a lot easier. That takes a bit more time, and it takes a bit more kind of trust. And in Latin America specifically, business is done in a relationship setting, which is really cool. So you have to kind of, you get to know the people over time, you build up a relationship, and then you explain to them what needs to be done. But what I often do is we have what I would call the fast track and the slow track. So the fast track are specific things which can be done quickly and are much more actionable. So one of the areas we worked on an awful lot in both MercadoLibre and in Lojas Americanas is the application. So in both companies, there is an Android app and an iOS app. So we spent an awful lot of time working in ASO, App Store Optimization. One of the reasons why I really liked App Store Optimization was because you could show results much quicker. So we had much more control over how the results for ASO would go. Why? Because ASO is a much simpler algorithm than the SEO algorithm. It's very similar, but it's just more simpler. So what I would do with my fast track would involve certain projects which I knew would take 1 to 3 months, where I could show concrete results. I would use these concrete results basically to win, if you like, trust. Then in parallel, I would be working on projects which I knew would take 6 to 9 months. So projects that take 6 to 9 months, for example, if you go and you navigate in an e-commerce site, you will see breadcrumbs. So let's say you go from the home to the category page, then you go to the subcategory, then you go to the product page. We go from the home, then we go into cellular phones, then we go into iPhones, and eventually we go to the iPhone Pro
Model.
Max product page. Exactly.
Yeah.
So this as a user, it seems very, very simple. But for SEO and for a bot, it's very, very interesting in terms of how the bot will go and it will find this page. If we want to make a change in how this flow takes place, it can be something very difficult, which could involve 6 or 7 different teams, and the results in the implementation, it could take six months for us to implement this, for us to be able to run a test. So it's a very costly project. So when I have a big costly project like this I want to implement, in parallel, I would do a very simple project, which normally would be around app, or it could be around one specific category, to show, hey, we as a team, we know what we're doing. These are the results we've got in one project, and now we're going to try to use this to get the results in a different project. So it's maybe I've gone a little bit around and about, but that is kind of how I would go about trying to show the value of SEO, specifically to directors when it was unknown in terms of how we would go about it.
Yeah, very clear. And I get the point that you try to simplify everything, and it's kind of relatable to what you mentioned before. You won't make big changes in the Brazilian website. You started by the Chilean one, and then you start, I don't know, you use it as a staging environment in a way, and then you start moving up in order to get to the real one, to the impactful one. So it's
Exactly
very clever.
Well, sometimes, specifically if you have websites, like in the case of MercadoLibre or Lojas Americanas, we're talking about millions of pages, millions and millions. And sometimes making a change in one element can cause complications or turbulence in other areas. And sometimes it's very difficult to understand why. So to minimize these issues, we would always try and have, a staging environment. We always try to control it as best we can. It's just one of the pleasures and one of the challenges working in SEO.
Very clear, very clear. Awesome. So I want to get, you mentioned the idea of working alongside different teams, okay, within a company with other teams. So I wanted to ask you, what are talking specifically about marketplaces, which I think
Sure.
they are both more than relatable, obviously established marketplaces. What do you think are other teams that are important, or the ones that are more near to SEO, perhaps content, research, or IT? Because I think if they are near you, you have to have a good relationship. You have not always to ask for them, but sometimes you have to give things to them in case they need. So, which do you think
Sure.
are those teams?
Sure. A ton. One of the characteristics of SEO, SEO team, is the amount of people that SEO needs to work with. So I found this one of the big challenges with SEO is that so we talked earlier on, you want to basically evangelize SEO in a company. Now, if you have successful evangelization, that means that then a lot of teams will come and look for you and say, hey, we're launching this project, we need your help. This is fantastic. This is good. But then it leads to a point where you're getting contacted by so many different teams, you then need to prioritize it. So for example, let's talk about Lojas Americanas or talk about MercadoLibre. I just wrote a little list of all the teams here. So we would work with the content team, we'd work with the search team, we'd work with the front end team, we'd work with the affiliates team, work with the ads team, work with the branding team, work with the commercial team. So there's 7, which I can mention at the top of my head. Let's pick 2 as an example quickly. So the ads team. So in Lojas Americanas and in MercadoLibre, as you can imagine, a huge amount of budget is put into how are we going to do advertising in the most successful way. One of the large advertising platforms are basically Facebook. It could be Instagram ads, Facebook ads, and then maybe ads in Threads when they're released, or it can be Google. So Google ads are very interesting. You can analyze an awful lot. What's the relationship between Google ads and between SEO? So a question which I don't necessarily know the answer to, if you are number 1 position in Google organic for a certain keyword, should you also have an ad above that in the search engine? We could talk about this all day. If we were to use the concept of Google traffic. So we have our Google ads traffic and we have our Google organic traffic. How are these 2 types of traffic related? So that's it's one area where we'd work closely with that team, answering these questions, running tests, helping them sometimes with reports, or sometimes they would help us in terms of giving us information. One of the areas which is super interesting when we talk about kind of enterprise SEO is specifically in the world of e-commerce, is how is e-commerce dictated by these large events. So we talk about specific promotions. One of the big ones, which is in Brazil, which is all around the world, but in Brazil it's massive, is Black Friday. So when we get down to Black Friday, a huge amount of advertising is put into Black Friday. So our organic traffic is going to normally increase hugely around Black Friday because there's going to be a huge amount of advertising. So, you can see that. That also depends a lot on working with the branding teams. So the branding teams, for example, in MercadoLibre, they might do what we call billboard advertising. Certain areas in the city, maybe in Buenos Aires and Rosario, Cordoba, etc. They would do billboard advertising. It's interesting for us in SEO to see, hey, what has this done for the amount of people who are searching for our branded keywords, MercadoLibre, in these specific markets? We work with the branding team to try to help them to show has top of mind increased, has search increased, all these sort of things. And I could go on and on, but the amount of teams that an SEO team works with is very large, and I see that as being a good thing. I think it's worse that if you're in an SEO team, you're very insular. If you're just focused on the organic traffic, there's probably something wrong. You probably should be working with a lot of other teams. The challenge with that is then priorities, saying, hey, what's important? Or, sometimes what we would do is what we did in both companies is that we would publish all our SEO guidelines and our SEO SOP, standard operating procedures, in an internal company intranet. So it's all there. So a lot of times if people came to us with specific demands and they weren't part of our priority list, we could at least point them to an online resource and say, hey, the information you need is here. Try to go on.
While you were talking, I was resonating the idea of recently I've been talking with Tom Critchlow from the SEO MBA. I don't know if you've heard of it. He said SEO is a very cross-functional activity because per se, it doesn't create value at all because you have the user experience team, the content, the products, you have many things. But you have to help and get help by all different teams. And these are all the teams you've just mentioned. So it's very clear that SEO is like crossing everything and helping build with a proper direction, right?
Yeah, as I said, for SEO to be successful, you really need to be cross-functional. So if we look back a little bit at the results, in a typical kind of e-commerce company, your organic traffic should be about 30%. So 30% of your traffic should be coming in organic. So that's a massive number. And if you can drive, if you can increase that, it's quote unquote free traffic. So if you can increase that, it can really help you. It needs to be cross-functional. And in the companies that I've worked in, I've seen SEO work the best. It's normally when the company itself understands the value, understands the importance of this traffic. So it should definitely be cross-functional.
Awesome. I think I have to make this question. After having worked, I don't know, in MercadoLibre, in Lojas, Americanas, what do you think, especially regarding performance, what do you think are some important strategies or levers in order to grow user acquisition?
Yeah, the way I kind of view SEO, me personally, we mentioned earlier on that growth marketing has become like a really interesting and really kind of cool part of, if you like, marketing at the moment. But I'm starting more old school. So for me, marketing's always been about growth. That's what it is. And I view SEO as fitting inside the kind of the marketing branch. And SEO is ultimately an acquisition channel. So we do SEO because we want to increase the amount of organic visitors, or organic users, organic sales, and whatever your key metric is. But that's what SEO is for, is to really drive that, your North Star metric. So for me, that's what it is. Now, when you're going about forming an SEO team in a company, you first of all need to understand, what is our key metric. You need to define what our key metric, so everybody knows what that key metric is. And then it's ultimately about analysis. Okay, what are the issues we need to do at the moment? And then what projects can we do to solve these issues to ultimately increase our key metric? And if you look at that methodology, it's a very similar methodology to how growth works. It's these kind of like short, relatively kind of actionable projects. And the only difference, I would say, in SEO, sometimes these projects can be longer term, but the methodology is more or less the same. And I personally view SEO as being the most effective is when it has a growth methodology. Where it's part of the marketing mix, and it is there to basically drive results.
Also, I want to perhaps jump to another topic that is really important to me, which is team management. I know you mentioned a lot of things. We've already covered a lot of things here, but I want to ask you, what are to you the key skills you have to be an effective manager in order to create a team, in order to help it grow internally, like helping people to grow? Pick the one you like.
Sure. For me, managing SEO teams has been some of the most enjoyable and kind of biggest challenges I've ever had in my career. I think the main thing I would say is to be curious. One thing with SEO, there's no definitive answer. So when it comes to managing a team, I think it's about kind of trusting the people who you're working with, trusting them to come up with solutions, and to have the strength to back them. So, that's kind of how I've seen it. All the teams I've worked with, we've had, massive challenges, because that's how kind of e-commerce SEO works. It's very, very competitive all the time. You need to kind of fight for those top positions. But if you have a team where things are working well and everybody's taking control, it makes it kind of so much easier. So, looking back at kind of some kind of specific examples, there's loads of them. But the one that I mentioned earlier on about Black Friday, when we work in Brazil, Black Friday is just this absolutely huge moment. We can sell more in Black Friday than we would in months. You can literally sell in one day how much you would in a month, and then everything just becomes much more higher stress. Yeah, it is. It's bizarre. So a lot of this basically comes down to then trusting your team that they know what the right thing to do is. And I was lucky. I was in Lojas for 4 Black Fridays. We had a lot of experience doing this, and some of the results we had were spectacular. We were able to kind of win or gain the number 1 position in Black Friday for 2 years in a row. And this was basically down to the massive kind of, if you like, trust in the team, and then the teamwork they're able to pull together. So, the professionals who were in charge of those specific projects worked with a huge amount of other people, huge amount of other teams. They're able to get the results. So for me, when it comes to leading a team, I think it's to just, have trust in the people, and then to just always be curious for kind of new solutions. Because as you said, we're working against Google's algorithm, which is very dynamic, it's changing all the time. So if we do the same thing every year, we will stay at the same place and we will decline. So we need to just keep trying new solutions. I think that's really, really fascinating. As I said, I'm now not working in marketplaces, but I'm really interested to see the effect of ChatGPT will have on marketplaces, as people are potentially looking more with ChatGPT to give them results and information on what products they buy. I think that'd be fascinating. From my point of view, I've always been super interested in how content can help people when they're on their buying journey. At what point in the buying cycle do people want content? At what point do they not want content? At what point can content get in the way of purchase? Or what point are people in the research phase? And I believe that ChatGPT will become a research tool, and I'm fascinated to see how that develops over time.
To me, it's also really fascinating to see. And I think I'm imagining lots of curious people, curious vendors trying to use, ChatGPT in order to create descriptions or whatever, in order to, let's say, do SEO inside e-commerces and also at scale. I think lot of things are going to change in the near future. What do you think the balance between soft skills, technical skills, business strategic vision, how the balance should be?
Sure. Ideally, on an SEO team, you need both. I think SEO team is one of the few places where you can have people with both set of skills. So in an SEO team, the SEO team in Lojas, Americanas, even the SEO team in Sherlock Communications, where I work at the moment, is we can have people who have very, if you like, communicative and kind of content profiles, people who are very, very interested in communicating, and people who can be doing more of the tasks such as evangelizing and communicating with other teams, as well as we can also have people who have very technical skills, if you like, very hard skills. And these are the people who tend to be much more focused on technical SEO. So if you like, on this line, people can fit in anywhere they want. Ideally, in terms of a team management point of view, you need to have a balanced team. So you've got people who are able to do the technical things and can deal with all these issues, as well as people who can also do the communication side. If you do have an issue, an imbalance, then you're going to need help from other teams. So, sometimes you can work more closely with technical teams. So we mentioned earlier on about search teams that are specifically in the search bar, which would be in typical e-commerce sites. If you don't have technical teams, if you don't have technical people on your team, then you need to work closer with them. But technical people would help you in an SEO sense in terms of fixing kind of SEO errors, which you might have. Mm-hmm. They can also be useful for interacting with Google Cloud Platform or other kind of Google products, such as Google Search Console or Google Analytics or Google Analytics 4 now, to take in all the SEO visitor data that you have to understand trends, understand which pages are growing, which pages are not. There's a huge amount of SEO technical stuff which is involved. So you really need those people with the hard skills. I would see the hard skills would be kind of programming skills, or they would be database skills, or they would be data kind of scientist skills in terms of analyzing trends. So they're kind of, if you like, the harder skills. On the softer side, SEO, obviously a huge amount of SEO is about content. What content should we create? What's the best content? Public relations is a hugely valuable part of SEO. How can we build up authority? How can we gain more links? How can we gain more exposure for our pages? That's another important area of SEO. So, there's a huge amount. It's all kind of really tied together. And I think for it to work well, that's really what you need. You need all these things to work together. So I mentioned the technical side of it. I mentioned public relations. I mentioned the content. I mentioned the data. The other one that we haven't mentioned would be people with organizational skills. So I've been talking an awful lot today about SEO projects. So we've had also for roles where people would be a PO of SEO, would be a project owner. You've got a certain SEO project. People will work with different stakeholders to make sure the project was delivered on time and that the results were managed. So the different profiles inside SEO is really huge. And I think it depends on, what projects you leave in the company and also what profiles you can hire. So it's one of the challenges that I've had as a manager with hiring the right people. it's, there's a huge opportunity out there for your viewers if they're interested in SEO. Companies really people having difficulty finding.
Yeah, that is a good thing you mentioned, because just as a quick question, when you are in MercadoLibre back in 2018, 2019, you didn't work with, I don't know, project owners or different parts which would be more relatable to product, right?
We did work very closely with the product teams, and I think when it
With
works
product.
well is when these are shared kind of projects. So as opposed to
Yeah,
it being an SEO team project, it's a shared
yeah.
team project. So it's kind of the SEO team working together with the product team. It works very well. Also because the skills that these POs have, are
Hmm.
they're very good at managing projects. So I think that works very, very well.
To get things done in big companies, which is, I think,
Exactly.
mostly of this. Yeah. Um, I want, for the last time, I want to get back to the skills part, because you mentioned perhaps the different people that can be within a team, the technical ones, the content, the one of data, communication. But if you have to reunite everything in one person, which would be, I don't know, your case, the manager, the director now, um, how how would you balance things? Perhaps more technical or more on the business strategic vision?
Sure. I'd bring it back definitely to, there's a book I really like, which is Measure What Matters. The author
Hmm.
is escaping me, but it's basically you build your key metrics and then what you can do in terms of reaching your key metrics. I base it purely on what are we trying to achieve. Um, I've got the book here. I'll shout it out to you later.
Yeah.
So what are your key metrics? And then I would assign priority, and I would assign resources based on achieving these key metrics. So if I'm managing the team, yes, I need to bring all this together and I need to define the priority. But the priorities should always be defined based on whatever you're trying to achieve. So sorry, it's Measure What Matters, which is by John Doerr. The director John. An
Awesome.
awesome book. I'll send it to you.
Thanks, Richard. I'll share it definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is. What I wanted to do is perhaps to see the two sides of the coin. Okay, you can create a huge team, but then you have to have someone managing everything. So I wanted to know your opinion on both sides. Okay, and then
Sure.
finally, what I want here is to ask you for specific, I don't know, scenario or advice. Put it as you wish. Um, what would be, or how would it look like the career path, okay, of a, let's say, of a senior SEO professional, okay? Because you can start as an analyst, then, I don't know, specialist, you can be a SEO manager, then you can lead a team as a team leader, the SEO director, depending on the company, on their needs, budget, and so on. And then what's next after that? Because you have, let's say, you have a roof. You cannot be a VP of SEO, because SEO, as I was saying before, as a thing, it doesn't have a structure, because you have to work alongside other teams. So would you recommend moving to product, to marketing? I want to know your vision on this.
Sure. Super interesting. So for me, I've always been very interested in terms of where SEO should fit inside an organization.
Mm-hmm.
In MercadoLibre, for example, SEO was inside the marketing vertical. So the SEO reported ultimately to the marketing director. In Lojas Americanas, for example, SEO fit inside the technology vertical. So he's reporting to the CTO, the Chief Technology
Mm-hmm.
Officer. In
Mm-hmm.
Despegar, I've heard that it fits inside product. So it's, it
Okay.
deals with the product people. So I think it really
Mm-hmm.
depends on which kind of vertical you're in. But from a personal point of view, or some advice to your viewers is, yes, ultimately you will reach a certain point in SEO where you can decide to go more for the specialist route. So you decide to become more of kind of, a deep specialist in whatever area in SEO you choose. We spoke earlier on, you can have more of the technical stuff, or you can have some more of the content stuff. Typically people would
Yeah.
need the specialization, which would be a bit more technical. So it could be in the data side of it. It could be in deep technical SEO. It could be in servers. It could be in cloud storage, anything like that. That would be kind of one side if you be on specialization.
Mm-hmm.
The other side would be to go a bit more into management. So if you've got for more of a communicative profile, you could say, hey, I want to start managing people. So the first thing to do that would be to start managing people in small projects, see how that goes. Then eventually you would probably go to some type of an intermediate job, which would potentially be called a supervisor or a coordinator, which would kind of coordinate a team in collaboration with manager. Then eventually you become a manager. As an SEO manager, I think the only thing you can really do would be to try to incorporate some other team. So, SEO is very complementary to, as I mentioned, we're on ads, potentially to affiliates, potentially to content. I think something like that. So if you're an SEO manager, you would look as your next step would be to kind of get involved with one of these other teams. And then ultimately, I think you would look to then make the step to try to manage two teams at the same time. So, hey, can you manage the SEO team at the same time as the affiliate team? And you get more involved. And then ultimately, I think if you were to try to go to director, as you said, you would then need to try to expand your horizon. It would be, obviously, a chat in terms of going for just based on SEO to then going into another area, because as you said, there would never be a chief SEO officer. Eventually it would be a chief marketing officer, or chief technical officer, or chief product officer. I think that's just the nature of moving up in large organizations. You just need to gain more responsibility. You need to prove that you can deal with that responsibility. You can show the results, and then you'll continue to rise.
To rise. Awesome. And also very, very clear to me. And here would be, what is your advice? I'm getting back a little bit on the main idea, but with a different approach. What is your advice for an SEO professional, okay, that wants to move up in the ladder, let's say, fast? What would you recommend?
Well, the standard things which we don't even talk about. Like, I saw a little image on LinkedIn today, which I really liked, which shows about kind of the things, the general things that the people need to move up. These ones were like being on time, work ethic, body language, energy, attitude, passion, being prepared. These are all kind of the basic things. So I think that obviously to be a professional in any line of work, you need all these professional things. Great. In SEO, you need to basically show your SEO projects are working and they have good results. But one of the bits of advice that I would give people, which I don't see enough SEOs doing, is having your own personal site. So I myself, I have my own personal site that I do little projects on, that I do little experiments on. Why? Because if I'm working in an agency, I have my client sites. I need to treat my client sites, like a baby. Treat it super well. It needs to work. Or if I'm working in a large marketplace, I can't just take a risk. Even if, as I mentioned earlier on, sometimes we use in MercadoLibre, and we would use Chile or a smaller market as a test. But still, Chile is a hugely important market for MercadoLibre. I can't make mistakes. You can do experiments. What I always recommend for people at any point in SEO is have a little practice site where you can do things, where you can try things, you can experiment. So and if I'm interviewing somebody, I love to see if they have practical experience, and if they're doing something on their own, that for me it shows their passion. So I don't know if this is maybe a way to move up fast, because as I said, anything in SEO takes a long time. But if you're doing something on the side, I think it will really, really help you just to gain a little bit more experience. One of the things with SEO is that SEO, the whole level or the whole idea of certifications in SEO don't really, work. It's very rare to be a certification. I've heard that Google are launching, the idea of a certification. But I would recommend, if anybody wants to move up in SEO, is to look at what is complementary to SEO. So I always think SEO is very complementary with Google Ads. So if someone understands SEO and they start to have a strong understanding of Google Ads, I think that works very, very well. SEO is very complementary with databases. So if somebody works with SEO and then they also have a very good understanding of SQL, where they can put together databases, that's fantastic. If somebody has a good understanding of UX, and how can we do A/B tests, that would also be very complementary with SEO. So depending on where you are with your SEO knowledge, if you've reached expert, or if you've reached good or strong or senior in SEO, then my recommendation would be to look for something complementary that you can fit that into. And in my opinion, the best way to reach kind of senior SEO to obviously in parallel to the work that you're doing and the great results you're showing at work, you have some kind of a private project or some kind of personal project to yourself where you can do things, where you can test things without any fear of failure. I'd strongly recommend that.
Awesome, and very clear. And yeah, now that you mention it, one of the things that get to surprise me are, let's say, personal projects or different things that some people can say, okay, I've done this, and you say, okay, you get to understand the logic and the intention and the workflow. So yeah, it's very interesting. But here, this is more like a personal question, and it's what's next for Richard Fenning?
Well, I feel that SEO as an industry just keeps growing. So, I mentioned earlier on about kind of chat GPT, and there's all these new things coming out all the time. So from my side, I never feel like I've learned enough in SEO. So at the moment working in Sherlock, I want to provide great SEO for our clients. I personally want to keep growing, and I love what I do. I feel very, very lucky to have worked in this digital marketing area for so many years. And I myself personally, I want to keep working in SEO. I want to keep trying to understand it. I feel that the more I understand SEO, the less I know. Now, okay, there's still so much I want to learn. And I myself am trying to kind of improve my skills around stuff like databases, stuff like technical SEO, all the things I mentioned today. I'm not lecturing you guys, I'm on that journey myself. So at the moment, working with some of the largest clients that are trying to enter Latin America with Sherlock, been really, really enjoyable. I continue doing that, continue to learn.
Awesome. So you just have to come back here to Buenos Aires or Sao Paulo, and that would be awesome. And are you planning to stay perhaps in the agency side, or you have like that itch to getting back to in-house, to more like enterprise in that?
Yeah, I spent probably about 8 years, if you like, in-house working in these massive websites. It was a huge challenge. What I really like at the moment in agency is the dynamic nature of
the speed.
Exactly. It's you're dealing with that, and I personally think that it takes a number of years to learn things. It's we are obviously very interested in speed, but to really understand things and get a good feel for it, I think it takes kind of 3 years. So I normally view my kind of career, if you like, in 3-year chunks, and it was just slightly over with MercadoLibre, slightly over 3 years in Lojas, Americanas. I think in like more or less 3 years in the agency side to learn it, and that seems like a natural, if you like, chapter. So at the moment, I'm more or less halfway through that 3-year cycle. I'm in kind of a year and a half. So more or less in about a year's time, I think I'll start looking for the next challenge. And I think the challenge would probably be either, as you mentioned, to go back into in-house kind of working in SEO enterprise, or even going kind of a smaller kind of niche website, trying to expand that. Maybe working in agency where you can help an awful lot of clients, or you can just look at kind of launching something. I think there's a huge amount of opportunity in Latin America in terms of launching new websites. Something I'm very, very interested in. How can you take, a new website or a website that's not doing very well? How can you improve the performance? How can you improve the visitor? And how can you monetize this website? So it can be monetized with e-commerce, be monetized with content, monetized as an affiliate. There's huge amounts of ways to monetize websites. I think that with the skills that I have and the skills that other people who work in SEO have, I think we're very well positioned to really work on the website monetization side. So that's another kind of, if you like, head project that I'm super interested in.
Awesome. So you have, I'll probably check again, if not before, in a year and a half to see where are you focused on. Awesome, Richard. Sure. So finally,
we can schedule another catch up next year.
Yeah, absolutely. The episode probably, I don't know, 30 or 40, and we can discuss about it in there. Now, yeah, absolutely. And Richard, where can people reach out to you?
Sure. So the best place to reach out to me is in LinkedIn, which is basically just linkedin.com/in/Richard Fenning. I'll
Mm-hmm.
always answer messages on LinkedIn. Anything to do with SEO, progression, anything to do with digital marketing or growth, anything like that, please give me a shout. To LinkedIn's the best way to reach me. I also have my own little website, like I said, it's richardfenning.com, where I do all these little tests. So if you guys want to drop in there as well. But anything to do with SEO, please give me a shout. Also, if you need any help, any doubts, feel free to get in touch with me. We're looking for a job. I'm always happy to kind of point people in the right direction, work out people in my network that I can help out with. That's the best place. I'm no longer really active on Twitter, sadly.
Okay.
LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you, Richard. Thanks a lot. And as I said before, I'm really happy to have you here to speak with you. Well, thank you, and let's talk soon. Right?
Right, great. Thank you. A pleasure. Ciao,
Thank
ciao.
you.
Abraço.
Bye bye.